Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Allie, and today I'm going to be talking about 8 books that I equally love as much as I dislike them. Most of these are 3 stars, but there are a couple 4 stars in here. And it's just, I don't know how it makes sense, but I guess I'll explain it to you. It's weird talking about these books because I'm obviously gonna talk some shit about them. However, there are also definitely 5-star things in each of these books, which makes these separate from like a most disappointing kind of book. Because as much as there's a part in each of these books that I dislike, I still want everyone to read them because it's so good in its own way at a certain point. As you'll see for the majority of these books, most of the time, I really enjoy the beginning of a story and then I either lose patience or something goes wrong in the second half that doesn't vibe with me. Also, I recognize that most of these are romances, so I'm curious what that says about me. Actually, I know what it says about me. First of all, I love beginnings of romances because you get all this setup and you have crushes, and I love a crush, but also most romances, like 99% of them, have a third act conflict. And so if it's not written well or smartly, it does feel frustrating for me because it seems so easily avoidable in a lot of cases. But yeah, I'll never stop reading romances just because I love the first half of romances so much. But anyway, let's get into the video. The first book that comes to mind when I was thinking about this is Just Last Night. I have never loved a book so much at a certain point and absolutely detested it at a certain point. This ended up being a 3-star because of that. And actually, I think it's more than the first half. I was like ready to 5-star this book. This is about a woman named Eve, and she's a part of this friend group and has been since high school, after high school, whatever. They're 30 now, but Eve has always been in love with Ed, one of the guys in the group. And you learn very early on, within like the first chapter or 2, that at one point he liked her back. So much happens in here that I was not expecting. So much discussion about friendship, toxicity, about manipulation, about grief. I was floored with the amount of shit that we were discussing, and it was so good. However, the thing that really pissed me off is that there is a very clear change in tone and in genre, I would say. Actually, I think I marked it right here. Rom-com begins on page 223. So up until here, this is a sort of very serious drama-filled book. And it is kind of slow-paced and you get, I just love it, okay? And this is where the rom-com, like I said, begins. However, this turns into a rom-com that's only maybe 150 pages. And that is not enough time to sell us on this rom-com, especially when we've had this much of heart and like agony. I don't know, it just didn't mix well, but also the romance that we were given as almost an afterthought. That's what it felt like. It was so lackluster. I was royally offended. But like I said in the beginning of the video, this is a book that I think you all should read because there is so much good shit in the first half. So yeah, that's my take on this. I'm gonna shut up about it. Next is The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegmund Broca. This is, I enjoyed the first half of this immensely. I fangirled about it in this video. This is a story about 2 authors who at one point in the past wrote like a best-selling book. And because of contracts, yada, 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 they have to come together again after a falling out to write another romance book. The reason I fell so fucking hard for this is because it is meta, because these 2 authors are writing a book about a couple while they're like dealing with their own shit and their own past and whatever sort of second chance enemies to lovers, friendship to lovers bullshit that they're dealing with. And there's a surprise layer of enjoyment because a married couple wrote this book. And so you know that they are having the same sort of conversations, and it just made me so happy. I thought the first half of this book really was smart about talking about romance tropes and the arc of a romance plot, and I thought it was so funny, and eventually it got old. This is a case of the third act conflict just feeling weak. It felt unnecessary. There was a sort of villain in this that was exaggerated and not nuanced, and they just went back and forth way too long. The characters were acting pretty mature by the end of it because because of the sort of immature aspect of the will they, won't they. That's just an immature thing in itself. And so it felt not very genuine to the characters that we had learned and loved. But again, I was having so much fun in the first half. And I'm super excited for this author's next book that's coming out. I think next month. I'm definitely getting it. Next, we have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is about a book, I don't know, an agent, I think. And she has a sort of run-in with this dude named Charlie. That's him. They have a work meeting. I think he's an editor and she's an agent, something like that. And they just bump heads during that meeting. And so they're not enemies to lovers, which is really how this book was sold. So that is something that kind of bugged me. That aside, they end up in the same small town accidentally. You see them, you know, interact with each other more. And obviously this is a romance, okay? You also get a lot of our main character's family life and her relationship with her sister, who she's on this vacation in the small town with. I love this book, first of all, because our main character was a type A personality, and that I've discovered this year is probably my favorite type of character to read about. I think this book was also pretty cool because so many books that are coming out lately are sort of opposites attract, and these two were very similar, and I kind of like reading about that. The reasons I ended up disliking the second half of this, however, is just I had really high expectations going into this. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of people did, but also there are certain tropes in this story that I just do not like. First of all, I hate a list in a book. Whenever the main character has to like check things off a summer list or something like that, it's an instant I do not care from me. Our main character and her sister sort of make a list, and it's so weird because they talk about it a lot at first, but then if memory recalls, it kind of just gets forgotten. Why even have it? I hate that. And then I hate to say it, I was just so bored by the second half of this. I do actually like the sort of family dynamic between our main character and her sister. I liked all of that drama. I liked the flashbacks. So I can't even really tell you why I disliked the second half of this. I think there was an energy change. There was really high energy in the beginning, and then it kind of just deflated. Please don't hate me. Oh my gosh, my camera just cut off and I have no idea where I stopped. So I'm going to do this book over again. It's 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. The first half of this book, like so many others, I loved. This is also a story about two authors, and 15 years ago, they had a 7-day sort of intense time in June, and now they are meeting up at a panel. They're seeing each other for the first time after not speaking or seeing each other since that 7 days. And it turns out that for these past 15 years, they've been writing each other in the characters that they're writing. And that shit, when I tell you, did not disappoint at all. That was so good. I think I really do like books about books or books about authors, especially because authors, that's exactly what they know. And so it feels so well done. The first half of it is all very intense. In the past timeline where you see these two meet up in those 7 days, it's very intense. It's very concentrated just in how they meet and the things that they're doing and the conversations that they have and the connection that they make. But also in the present timeline, because these two are seeing each other for the first time in 15 years. So the anticipation is so well done, and it really drives the story for this whole first half. But then kind of similar to Just Last Night, there is a point in this book, the tone completely changes from intense to very light, and it's almost like a rom-com. I just was completely distracted and taken out of the story because the tone didn't match. And so I think that's something that's just a me thing, where if it's super high energy in the beginning, I want it to stay fun and high energy through the end. Obviously, there's got to be a serious moment where two people are being vulnerable in a romance, but I still want an undertone of like lightness and fun. And the same could be said for an intense drama like this. If it's super intense and rich and high stakes sort of feeling in the first half, even more than the first half, I feel like I want that the entirety of the book, where you can have light moments where these two are realizing things and falling in love. But I don't know, I need like an even tone in a book. But again, like all of these, I think this really is worth the read because the first half of this book is amazing. Okay, next, this is such a weird book, okay? It's not even weird, it's disturbing. And so this doesn't fit into most of the other conversations I'm having about these books about like the first half I'm liking, the second half I'm not. The thing about this book, The Delorean by Missouri Williams, is that it is so well written. It is so beautifully written. However, the content of this is so fucked up that it's like, I love it for the writing itself and the complexity and how much it made me think. However, this is some fucked up shit. And it is a little disgusting. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I just could not get over the writing of Missouri Williams. I think this is their debut novel. This is a book, a sort of post-apocalyptic book about this family that is born on incest, okay? We have the matriarch who is the leader, and her brother and her have populated this sort of community. It's gross. There's also a lot of violence. There are obviously content warnings in here. One in particular that really took me by surprise, but I should have seen it coming. It's the sort of fall of the matriarch's empire that she's built. I feel like this is saying something about religion, or I don't know, like an Adam and Eve situation, but I can't tell at what level it's getting there. I also feel like there's references to like the Great Flood. I don't know what's happening, okay? I'm not smart enough to figure that out. However, I tried my hardest to annotate this book, and it was so fun to annotate because it is a very dense text. There's hardly any paragraph breaks. There's hardly any dialogue. It is really, really dense. And yes, some people have said that it is, oh my God, what is that word? Pretentious. Okay, thank you. And so I really like to go in with texts like these where there's so much symbolism and I don't know, shit that I can't understand and try to understand it. And so in that way, reading this as a sort of literary study, I felt like I was back in college and I was being pretentious, but I had so much fun. I don't like saying that because of the contents of this book. It is fucked up. If you're interested in this, do not go lightly. If you don't like fucked up shit, do not read this book. Next is also a 4-star. This is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. And this is the story of Faye? Yes, Faye. And 5 years ago, her husband died. Not a spoiler, it's in the flap. And now she's finally ready to put herself out there. And I cannot explain the rest because I feel like a lot of people have read this year, so you might have heard spoilers. However, I don't want to say anything because I didn't know it going into the book, and that was part of the fun. Really, this is about Faye figuring out what she wants and going there. She will stop at nothing to just discover more of herself, and in a way, I really respect her for that, no matter how messy things got. There is something that is sort of, I don't know if it's taboo. I feel like that's how it was explained to me. I'm not sure if that really applies. It's definitely not normal. I don't know what to say about this because I had so much fun reading the mess, and that's exactly like the breaking point for me for what I loved and what I didn't like as much. So in the first half of this is Faye making her mess, making things messy, and then the second half is her having to deal with the consequences of that. And I didn't like that as much because it's not as fun. So that's just on me. However, I think it's so funny that the thing people don't like in this book is the thing that I did like, and so that's kind of fucked up with me. I'm just realizing. There's also a friendship in here, Faye and her best friend Joy, and the conversations that they had, it felt like such a good written friendship, almost so much that I hope that Joy gets her own book. I feel like that'd be so fun to read about Joy because Joy calls Faye out. She's like, you're making a mess. You're being real messy right now. This also taught me that I am a simp for any love interest that can cook. I think the thing I loved most about this was Faye's sort of unrelentless search for her happiness, and I really respect that. But my least favorite thing in the book, besides just, you know, the sort of mess having to be cleaned up, is that it got so cheesily intense at the end. Like, two people that don't know each other for very long start making very grand speeches about how much they mean to each other, and that just does not feel real to me. I just loved the beginning of this so much. It was so much fun. But also I feel like a lot of it spoke to me. Again, if you've read this book, you're probably like, girl, that's a red flag, please. Okay, next up is I Kissed Shara Wheeler. And I originally gave this 4 stars, but now I'm thinking I'm gonna bring it back down to a 3. This is a YA romance, and our main character's name is Chloe. Chloe is this cutthroat, type A, academically driven, just queen. I love her. She's got the same sort of smart, witty energy that like Paris Geller has, and that is the thing. Oh, let me finish explaining what this book's about. She wants to be valedictorian so bad, and the only person sort of in her way is Shara Wheeler. They all go to this religious sort of Christian school, and it's the sort of religious Christian school that is shady and judgy, yada yada. Our main character is also like outwardly bisexual. And Shara Wheeler, the blonde bitch, sorry, her dad is like the pastor principal of this school. When this book opens up though, Shara Wheeler has sort of gone missing, but before she has gone missing, she kisses our main character Chloe. She also has a boyfriend, and she also kissed this random neighbor dude. And Shara Wheeler has left these little pink envelopes for these three people to find and sort of hunt her down or hunt for clues. The first half of it, first of all, you have the high energy of Chloe, who is just this witty ass character, and I loved the energy in this. And it's also this mystery. That was really fun, reading about these clues, trying to figure out what is going on, both, you know, where Shara is, what happened, but also how each of these characters feel about one another. And I thought it was so fun. It almost had like a Mean Girls energy in the beginning. And then in the second half, now I'm just realizing it almost completely switches genres. So in the first half, it's this YA sexually charged mystery. And in the second half, it's this YA cheesy romance. Very cinematic. I really like the mystery aspect of it. It just sort of, again, deflates because where are we going here? That's kind of how the second half felt. Again, though, if this had stuck to the same energy level, I think I would have loved it. However, if this were a movie and literally nothing was changed, I think I would have liked the movie more. I don't know how to explain that. It's very cinematic in the end. And lastly, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is not like I liked the first half, I didn't like the second half. I think it was long and repetitive, okay? I'm not gonna hide that fact. However, the concept of this and how much I'm still thinking about it is why it's in this video. This is a story obviously about Addie LaRue, and back in God knows when, 1714, she sort of makes this deal with this devil character. She's being sort of forced to marry someone and she doesn't want to, and she says she wants more time. And so he makes a deal that she is going to live forever, and the sort of backhand to that wish is that no one's going to remember her face. Part of why I really liked the concept of this is how you find out what exactly that means. Like, why can no one remember her? How does that lore work? How do the rules work? And that was really fun for me to figure out. I also liked reading about Addie as we get flashbacks to her over the centuries, seeing how she's dealing with this curse and seeing her relationship with this devil, because they know each other for centuries, and you see the dynamic between them, and it is very fascinating. However, this is obviously in this video because I really didn't like part of it. In the present timeline, Addie meets this dude, and I cannot for the life of me remember his name. I don't even think it's in the flap. And that whole connection, that whole relationship is so bland and forgettable that it is annoying. I don't dislike the character, it's just their connection feels so lackluster. It's like if two people were stranded on the island and they were the only survivors, of course they would create a friendship. And so it felt kind of like that, like, well, you're only talking to each other because you have to, like, at this point. So yeah, I ended up giving this a 3, and I stand by that because of how much I had to read about the same thing kind of happening over and over, and the language itself being repeated over and over and over. But I do gotta give it credit where it's got, that did not make sense. I really appreciate the concept that V.E. Schwab gave us and how much I'm still thinking about this. I've got to give it respect. And there we go. Those are the 8 books that I equally loved and hated. I didn't really hate any of these books, although some of them really pissed me off at certain points. But I think you should give all of these a try because, again, so many people have given each and every one of these 5 stars. I don't even know how interesting a video this is, but thank you for watching. And I do have my least favorite books of the year coming up and my favorite. So stay tuned for that. And yes, I will see you later. Bye.